And welcome back to Esports Tonight. This is my brand new show that I am dedicating to more than just the SFL, to all esports that is out there and gamers. Tonight's guest is Mr. Eliot Oreskovic. Did I do it?
We'll go with it.
Thank you so much, Eliot, for being on the show. He is actually over the United States Esports Association that you can find on Twitter, and he is here to give us some more information about that and for us to actually get to know him as a person and see what he's all about. So, Eliot, how was your day today? We're going to start off with some easy stuff.
I'm going to lie and say it was a good day.
Okay. You know, we all have those days. Just hope that it gets better in the end. You know what I mean? I'm sure it's busy. Very busy. But Eliot, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us your age, your hometown, some interesting facts about yourself, and your favorite NFL team.
Oh, all right. So yeah, Eliot. I'm 23.
Nice.
No, I'm from Cleveland. So my answer is the Browns. Because if I don't say that, I will be executed. It is mandatory to like the Browns, by law. Interesting things about me. I don't know, man. You know, I don't know. My spiel is normally just about how I got into esports. So these are very new questions.
Got to change it up. You got to keep it fresh.
Yeah, you're keeping me on my toes. I'll tell you that. I mean, I got into esports not because of esports. I'm terrible at video games. They're fun. There's a car accident outside. Mm-hmm. No, I got into esports on the business side. So, my involvement has always been more businessy, and I think that kind of paints how I view the industry today. So that's an interesting thing. Number one, I'm terrible at video games. I don't know. I mean, I got a degree in marketing, but I didn't really ever want to do that. I kind of always wanted to get into politics, but there's no simple way to do that. And marketing gets you a job, and it lets you do politics at some point. So, especially, international politics has always been interesting. So, while I don't speak multiple languages, I guess I speak Latin a little bit, because I went to a prep school and that's all they teach. But I don't speak any useful language. I have 1,000 different language books and at least familiar with structurally how they work. So I nerd out over that every once in a while. I think behind me I have the complete set of every Chechen language grammar book translated into English that's ever been published, because there's 3. And that is a language that no one knows exists, and that has a lot of baggage attached with it. But I guess that gets to another thing. Third interesting thing, I have an unhealthy obsession with the Caucasus. It's a very interesting region. I'm really interested in Chechnya. And if I were probably to get into, a poli-sci degree or something, as a master's or doctoral program, it would probably be with a concentration on the Caucasus, with Chechnya in particular. It's a whole, it's a weird region, especially Chechnya, because they've always been in this weird give and take relationship with Russia, which has kind of painted their history in a weird way. And it's a combination of a lot of different things. Anyway, totally unrelated to esports.
But this is good, because I think it's important for people to know the person behind the players or does association as well? So when you are interacting with them, they'll go back and look at this and it's like, hey, I remember him.
Yeah.
Cool dude. I like the interview that he did. Let me work with him just because of that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but that's some very interesting stuff, my dear. Very interesting stuff. So you said you're very bad at gaming. How did you get involved with esports in the first place if you're so bad at it?
Yeah. No, it's always just been on the business side. So 2018, buddy from high school, we graduated in 2016. So this was sophomore or junior year. Might have been early junior for college. I went to the state university. I went to Cleveland State, which great, very very proud, alumni base there. Went to a liberal arts school, which a very different experience from a state university, especially Cleveland State. So they don't have a business program because that's just not liberal artsy. But they do have an entrepreneurship program for some reason, and he got involved in that. And they had this entrepreneurship competition, which for some reason was connected to OSU. I don't know why. But he was doing that, and he had this idea for a lounge. It's more like an arena for somewhere in Greater Cleveland, and at the time it was more innovative than it is now. So it would accommodate everything that's good about a lounge, everything that's good about an arena, as well as have specific accommodations for like streamers and just content creators and in general, and then obviously interact with the amateur community in a more healthy way. So it runs competitions through it. It also has has space specifically allocated for local teams, and does all those sorts of things. So that was the thing he was doing, and he called me up the one night, and he says, "Eliot, I'm doing this thing. I'm in an entrepreneurship competition. I need finance numbers." He's like, "I don't know how to get those because they need to look reasonable." And he's like, "Can you make those up?" So I did. Making up making up numbers is really easy when you kind of know how to do it. Right. So threw them together, and then that ended up spiraling into about a 6-month conversation with a VC down in Columbus. So very quickly, we got thrown into the world of venture capital, which is not a fun world. That is that is the worst part of finance, which already kind of tells you a lot about the environment. But right. It's probably a better way to start than not, because you kind of get the worst of the spectrum. Right. Yeah. So that's kind of where we started, and 2019 we got into more competitive stuff, but still, I was really on the businessy side of it. We had a semi-pro org that sent a team to the U.S. Nationals for Rainbow Six Siege in 2019, and that was exciting because they competed against Disrupt, Luminosity, Evil Geniuses, all legitimate orgs. And then there's us. Then that ended up folding after a while, just because it's amateur esports. It's highly volatile. Probably around December 2019, we decided that we wanted to get into league admin online. The reason was because going back to 2018, the goal was to have a physical location. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that requires a significant amount of capital, so it's always on the back burner and trying to figure out how do we get there. The people that we would talk to on the more traditional side of entrepreneurship and just traditional side of money are like, well, you have to prove that that you can do this and prove the concept. And I'm like, yeah, everyone's already proved the concept. How do we do that to satisfy you? And they're like, well, just maybe you host a smaller event and maybe you do a competition. So we did that. Started with the online stuff. The idea that you can start doing online leagues. These would then lead into a larger in-person conference in Cleveland, where it is about bringing the schools together, bringing amateur level people together, and just having a nice little Comic Con, but for esports. Nice. And then once we do that, now we can go into LAN events. Or if we're doing LAN events, then we need a place, and then eventually we get back to having a lounge. That never happened because the pandemic happened, and the plague definitely isn't a good time to be doing esports in person. So we didn't do that. But no, so that's where it was. So 2020, we started to do more. We kind of committed more to the idea of online leagues, and that just became a normal part of what we do in the amateur community. Now we're in, that brings us into 2020. Around the summer is when we both graduated with our undergrad degrees, and I decided I was going to go do grad school because I thought that was a good idea. Words. I was looking for something to do over the summer, right. That would help us network for the amateur stuff, and found the USEA, and I was like, oh, this is a organization. It doesn't do anything. It's very poorly designed. I'll go on for the summer, and then there we go. It'll be a nice little thing to throw on the resume. Well, it turns out that it also wasn't doing anything, and there was a lot of things wrong. And then eventually I got stuck doing it. So now I'm here, and this is my thing. A little while after starting with the USEA, me and the other person co-founded a nonprofit that was originally designed sort of as a more local nonprofit to do esports in Greater Cleveland. But we didn't have anything, and we still don't have anything in our charitable purpose about being like in the community or for a specific place. Mm-hmm. It's more about youth development in general. So we've, right now we're using it as a home for our women's league for Rainbow Six Siege, which does give us an advantage because it means that we can apply for grant money to support internships as a professional development thing. And it does mean that we can, legitimately accept donations as part of a prize pool, which is not only unique, but it means we can do things more legitimately, and we're a little more attractive for getting money, mm-hmm. which I think would help in the long term. The rest of 2020 was boring. It was just kind of, I say boring, very eventful, but not very interesting. Really just keeping the USDA, getting the USDA up to a point where it was good. And that was a very long time because there was a lot of things that, were not necessarily wrong, but that weren't entirely right. Mm-hmm. And it's still not perfect by any extent of the imagination, but it's better. 2021, this goes past the USEA, but the USEA is a weird thing for us because, it's obviously its own thing and we interact with it as that, but it also allows us to talk to tons of people that we have no reason to talk to for any other reason and that wouldn't want to talk to us for any other reason or in any other situation. And because of that, we've had conversations with chambers of commerce in like Orlando. And it's like, why would I ever call these people up? But they were interested in something and we talked to them. We talked to the people who do casinos. We talked to people on the nonprofit side of casinos. We talked to org owners, lounge people, all these different things. Mm-hmm. And you kind of get a sense of what the needs are and what everyone agrees are the needs. And knowing that, ultimately, at least for myself, I think, the other person is interested in it too. Like, we're very much interested in the idea of helping out, trying to make Cleveland a better place, because it's not great. It could be better. And then the state of Ohio as well. So whenever there's an opportunity to do something specific, either to Cleveland or Greater Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, or Ohio, we're going to take it. So the newest thing that we're interested in is creating an esports commission that functions as a 501c3 sports commission, really to drum up business to Ohio as an esports destination. But obviously, doing it within 501c3. So it's more of a focus on how do we prepare, or how do we enhance the competitiveness of Ohio along charitable, things, charitable educational research, all that, to make it more appealing. So this goes anywhere from, STEM and education sort of related things to youth development, again, in the recreational context, to the highly competitive stuff. How do we attract investment in a way that's not obviously against what the IRS would like us to do? And then that gets us into another conversation that we're interested in, where it's, the state of Ohio is notorious for being gerrymandered. It's pretty bad. Because in the gubernatorial elections, it's about 50-50. And whenever there's a vote for senator, it's pretty close to being 50-50. But, we do have one Democrat, one Republican, and I think that's what keeps the balance, because everyone just votes and we understand this is okay, or at least acceptable. But because we don't have a great districting policy, the House and the Senate are very gerrymandered, to the point where it's like a 66+% majority for Republicans, even though that's not really representative of Ohio. So it does create a weird situation where you have a lot of disparities in people's opinions about how the state should be run, and what's actually politically viable. So the other important thing is that Ohio has a very bizarre home rule policy. So normally, cities are allowed to just do their own thing within established parameters. Ohio's home rule law, for whatever reason, is a little different. And I don't remember the way it's different, but this was an issue back in 2016, maybe. It was an issue in the city of Cleveland, because he's actually my councilman, but he's the president of the city council, and he was trying to get Cleveland to pass a $15 minimum wage. Highly controversial, because it always is. And even though the downtown economy is propped up by hipster restaurants that can very easily afford $15 because they're already paying it, there's people weren't okay with it, and it got into a weird position where he was saying, we can pass this for the city of Cleveland because a lot of cities do that. And then there was a conversation about, well, he's not even legally allowed to do that because the state doesn't allow cities to do that. And it was a very weird conversation. That all being said, and Ohio tends to have very archaic laws for very bizarre things. So we have a weird annexation law because we still have a lot of townships. Right. We have, as much as it shouldn't be, and as much as it is unconstitutional, same-sex marriage is not legal according to the revised code, because they never got rid of it. So it's still in the revised code that marriage is whatever between, all that. And then there's an extra part that they threw in there, which is that, I don't even know what they call it. So we'll call it same-sex marriage. I'm not sure what their wording is, but same-sex marriage is against the strong public opinion of whatever. And I'm like, all right, strong words. And that's a weird situation because it isn't illegal at all. And it's also unconstitutional that's even there. But it does create a weird political environment where that's the kind of thing that can't get removed from the revised code because there's just not political support for it. Mm-hmm. But it's also not actionable because the minute, a public official decides to do that, now there's a Supreme Court lawsuit, and that's not great. So there's a lot going on, and because there's old structures and all these other things, it leaves an opportunity to try to influence how politics is done throughout the state, to the benefit of whatever. So what we're looking at right now is sort of how do we get involved in politics, not in a, elected capacity, but how do we do it in other ways so that we can start to obviously benefit ourselves personally and professionally, but to get policies that are actually beneficial, starting with the people and the places that could get those things passed. Again, recognizing that it's ultimately a problem of representation. So that's our newest thing. We do things by the day, really, so that could change by next week. But yeah, that's kind of how we get to where we are today and my backstory within esports. So that's my spiel.
And I really appreciate you sharing that. Like I said, it gives us a view as to what was going on in your life to decide that you wanted to even take on, this USEA thing. And I know you said that when you got it, it just needed work. But sometimes when you are tasked with something and, it kind of just falls in your lap, it was meant for you to do it. So I think that the stars aligned for you to be able to have this moment to be able to create a positive change, for esports, getting it more out there, because I know there are some people that don't look at esports as actual sports. But the only difference, in my opinion, because I'm involved with a lot, I'm involved in a few wrestling leagues. My main one is I'm quarterback for the SFL, the Simulation Football League. I'm in a baseball league. I'm also a race car driver. I play hockey. But I enjoy the fact that I'm able to do all of these things, hear my name called on the field or in the rink, wherever I am, and not get hurt doing it. But I can still get all the accolades I would as if I was actually doing it, Right. And I think esports is important because, like when you mentioned COVID, if we didn't have esports, I think a lot of people would have went crazy because it helps take your mind off things. It helps you be immersed in something else than your own problems. And a lot of times people come to esports or sports period just to get away from the world, And I think that when you have such a passion, that like the passion that you have for it, I think that it does a world of good. And when you get with those right people that can help lift you up, it's unstoppable,
Yeah. No, I mean, that's definitely, I think that's kind of been our experience with it, actually. The organization functionally is a year old. And 99% of what I've done up until very recently has just been sitting in calls with people to keep relationships alive, and then to make sure that we have some sort of positive rapport. And when we go, hey, we're just trying to do X, Y, and Z, no one's ever obviously hostile to it. And it does ultimately come down to, hey, we're just trying to do good things. If you think we should do good things too, let's figure out how to do it. And I think we're finally to a point where, again, the fires are kind of put out. We can talk about what programming looks like, and actually for the rest of this year, sort of my focus, I had two things mainly. One, three things. I'm already lying. Three things. One is we have an internship program, just as a very entry level thing. I call them the entry level internships, because they're for people that otherwise wouldn't be getting an internship, or for whatever reason would exponentially benefit from it. So freshmen in college, we have a couple people in high school.
Right.
We have people that are just coming out of the military, people who, graduated high school 10 years ago and are getting a degree now. There's a great opportunity. And then also for people that are looking to get into esports but don't have an in any other way, here's an opportunity. And then structuring it so that it looks good to an HR person, so that while esports credentials right now are not understood, let's say, and experience really isn't appreciated by HR people, it looks like what it needs to look like. It says what it needs to say. So you get the best of both worlds. So working on that to keep that alive, and then hopefully expanding it so that we're working more hands-on with universities, so that not only do I just have to fill out the paperwork, but it's not even a question of whether this is legitimate, because we're already working with the career services people. They get it. We get it. Whatever. Then the rest, actually a couple things other than that, but the main focus for me is on the partnership side. So we have a couple organizations we're talking to that have just been long conversations that finally are kind of hitting a good actionable spot. So it's just following through on those and getting us into the new year. But the last thing and the most important one is that now that we have all these things kind of in place, we can start talking about funding. And I'm in a tragic position where I'm not tied to any program in particular. So, while I'm able to hopefully find money for the two other people that, help really run the organization, because they are tied to a program, and obviously to hire, people, not beneath, but in addition to them, and then to pay interns. I am in a tragic place where funding for Eliot is difficult to find, because it's from general operating support, which is hard. But I think we're in a good place.
Absolutely. And I think that you'll get yours in the end. I think
so too. I hope so.
But Eliot, I'm curious, before I let you go, I want to know, what are some key takeaways that you would want people to know about the USEA, and what they need to know about it in general, and how, if someone wants to do a donation or find out more information about you, where can we find that?
Yeah. So the spiel is that the USEA was founded in 2018 by a guy called Miguel. Miguel's originally from Venezuela. He did his bachelor's in engineering there, came up to the U.S. to do a master's in finance. Then he went to work at Microsoft for about 15 years in their Xbox division. He in 2018 is when Xbox debuted the adaptive controller. So he was able to participate in that event with the Special Olympics. That was kind of his first real institutional exposure to esports, though he's been involved with recreational tennis in Venezuela and the US, and now he lives in Spain, and he's making his daughter I like to think he's forcing his daughter to do tennis just because he likes it, because it does seem like that at times, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe she's just really passionate about tennis, but that was the thing. So he got to do that, and then he saw, how traditional recreational and amateur sports has like some sort of ecosystem that makes sense, or at least it works a little bit. Esports isn't even close to having any of that, and it especially wasn't in 2018, 2016. So creating the organization that would be able to sort of do that was kind of the goal. Now, the referent organization is the USTA. It's a unique reference because they get the benefit of working with the Olympics. We don't get that benefit. And I'm not even sure it's a benefit, going to be honest. But, there's a lot of baggage that comes with it. But, doing a lot of the similar things. So, again, with an emphasis really on the development of the industry at the points where it's not savvy to pump money into it because you're not going to see a return. But that ultimately are foundational to the whole thing. So nominally, what I'll tell people is that we're founded to support the development of recreationalism and amateurism in esports, obviously, with a focus on the United States. Again, those are the isms. So long term, I think it's really taking this just nonpartisan, impartial, non-biased, etc. position as just an organization, a 501c3 trying to do good things in the industry, and that's that. But short term, it's about what can we do with the significantly limited resources that we have that can get us a little closer, and that can start the conversations that need to happen so that 5 years from now, the idea of esports having the benefits of what traditional sports gets from being a little more institutionalized. How do we get there without sacrificing everything that esports already has, which is being open, moderately democratic, increasing the extent to which it's democratically owned by the people that are in it, and then obviously promoting every other good thing. So I didn't include it, but we have 3 different value pillars: education, recreation, and then diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility. And what I'll say about the last 4 is that those don't, correspond to programming. They're just 4 things that we believe in that need to be, let's say, foundational to the development of the industry, so that we don't get into the same traps that every other, institution and then system has to where we need to fix things in the future, because we definitely are in a position to prevent that from happening. So we're actually in the process of discussing how we can expand our scope to allow us to do all of these different things that are really beneficial, without ever drawing into question, drawing our tax exemption into question, so that we're not straying too far away from what we're saying we're doing. And it's all charitable at the end of the day, so it's not a problem. So really just more about the development as a whole along educational, charitable, all these other things, things. But yeah, so overall, that's what we do. We have 1,000 different programs we want to do. They all relate to different things. Probably the most viable, I'll say real quick. So we have one of the things that we've been very interested in is industry self-regulation. So, we're not a governing body. I can't stress this enough. We're not a governing body. We don't want to be a governing body, and we don't like the idea of governing bodies. However, I think it's non-controversial to the traditional world to say that some regulation is okay, and if it's self-regulation, that's the best kind of regulation, because we all get to determine what it is that we're going to play by. So myself and his name is John Paul, actually. He's the person I went to high school with and have done everything with. We gave a keynote. He's also the chief programming person for the USEA. We gave a keynote for the ISO. They had an event in Germany. We didn't go to Germany, but they had an event in Germany this past March, talking about how the ISO can get into esports, and the ISO being the largest, general use standards organization. That was definitely a fun conversation, to obviously be able to give a keynote at their event, but also it immediately got us into at the highest level, like what it is that they do and how they do it. So, we very quickly got to see all the problems with it. And we're like, well, we can't participate in ANSI, which is the American affiliate, because it's very expensive and we don't have money to begin with. I would like to, but oh yeah, it's not great. But we can still try to do things now so that when we're able to get membership and participate in a more in actually participate, we'll have already done the work and can just align the two, later. So it's about how do we promote diversity? How do we promote ethicality just in general? How do we promote basic legal considerations? So COPA, not FERPA. What's the other one? The FLSA, things like that. And then how do we get organizations to start structuring themselves in a way that is more appropriate to what amateur sports would consider okay. Recognizing that we're never going to truly get something incredibly formal because it is the informal economy. That's just something we all have to learn to live with, if we already haven't already. And working within that constraint, what can we do to make it better? So we have a commission on amateur esports where it's a bunch of amateur and semi-professional org owners, and we're starting to formalize our first draft of criteria that we would be auditing and accrediting organizations against. Obviously voluntary, free of charge, everything. And democratically informed. So what can we all agree on? 2022, I think, is when we'll start auditing and accrediting, but the rest of this year is getting it all formalized. Then we're the U.S. participant we're a participant in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. They have a program called the Sports for Climate Action Framework, which is basically a sports-specific implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement. So they have all the normal things, but their main goal is a 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions for participating organizations. For us, that's not a problem because we're entirely remote, so we're already there. It's about offsets, but the rest of the industry isn't participating. I think we're one of two esports organizations, and that's not saying a lot. So there are a lot of barriers to participating with things in the UN, even though it is open to everyone theoretically. There's a huge learning curve, and the UN, for all the good that it does, doesn't exactly help make things very accessible. So our goal right now is how can we have a North American version of this that allows people in esports to participate in a way that doesn't require them to know anything, but ultimately gets us to where we have consistent reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, but then also look at things like just environmental considerations in general, ethical consumption, and then what do we do with tech waste, and then how can we promote reuse and reclamation. The rest of what we do probably right now is related to not schools in particular, but students, just being young people really, but students, because that's where they go every day.
Right.
So competition that is more aligned with student life as opposed to something more competitive, and then how we can offer opportunities for professional development and go from there, and then extend all those opportunities into the community in general so that we can just have really community based and more local esports, so that just like with traditional sports, you're 4 years old, your parent wants you to do something, they'll go send you off to play softball for the summer, or at least that's what we do in my neighborhood. Like, that should be an option for esports, and it's never going to be truly the same, but we can get something similar. And then how do we deal with youth organizations? So using Cleveland I use Cleveland as my baseline for everything, but we engaging young people is always a very big concern. All of our statistics are bad. So there's a lot of organizations that are designed to just make sure that young people are engaged outside of school, and then in school, so that obviously that they can finish high school, which isn't even close to a given, then that they get into college, that they complete college, and that they get a job. Or if they don't go to college, that they get a job. Most importantly, that they stay out of prison. Esports is obviously something that, there is overlap here. There's professional overlap, there's recreational overlap. The problem is always that this isn't something that is immediately, it doesn't feel accessible, and it doesn't feel related. So by, starting with schools and extending the programming, the goal is to really say, hey, what we're doing isn't that different from what you already do. And you can obviously work with us to do stuff. So yeah,
Exactly.
that's that. And then, we have our website, esportsus.org. There's not much on it. I'll be honest.
Yes.
It's a very bare bones website. But there's an email. So I think that's good enough.
Hey, you know what? What I will do is put your Twitter handle right here, right as we're speaking, and so people can actually go on your Twitter page and contact you, because I thought it was nice seeing you. I don't know if I said it on while I was recording or off recording, but I noticed that a lot of my counterparts for the SFL was adding you
Yeah.
on Twitter. So I was like, oh, what is this? Let me find out. And then when I contacted you, you actually responded. Very, you're very nice and professional about it and everything. And that's why I wanted to go ahead and give you this platform to help your cause, so it helps all of us, because anyone that's into esports knows how it can make an impact on you. And I look forward to seeing how everything shapes up for you in the future. Of course, you can feel free to come back on the show whenever you want to. If you got some big news you want to share with everybody, I'd love to have you back on. But I want to thank you specifically for making time for me. This was special. This is my first show actually dealing with esports as a whole and not just one particular sport. So this should be interesting. And thank you for being my first guest.
Yeah, no, thank you for obviously reaching out, number one, but letting me talk at you for an hour.
Yeah. And listen, and like I said, it was a lot of good stuff, a lot of good information, and I really do hope that this podcast helps your cause. I cannot let you go, though, without at least letting you get the last word. So that can be a shout out. You can sing a song right now, or you can recite a poem, whatever you want to do right now. Eliot, the floor is yours.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't ready. I know.
Always coming at me with new stuff. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. What do people normally do?
Well, they normally give a shout outs to whomever they like. I have had people sing to me. I've had people recite their favorite quote. So it just depends on what you want to do. And since you know how my show goes, the next time you'll be ready, right?
I don't know if I have a favorite anything. Like too many things. Oh God, who would I give a shout out to? Oh no. It's highly political. How do I choose? I really don't know. You're catching me off guard with all these softball questions. No, all my homies,
There you go.
in general.
That works for me. Well, Eliot, this was fun. I look forward to having you back on at some point soon. And good luck with what you're doing, man. I wish you the best.
No, thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. You have a good day.
Yeah, you too.